Hi, I'm Graeme, Chief Exec of SCMA. The new guidance, which will support the reopening of all childminding settings in Scotland and beyond those of you who've remained open to support key workers and vulnerable children, was published quite late last night, a little bit later than any of us expected. We know how frustrating this has been for you all, waiting to learn the detail to understand what the implications might be on your practice at this time. We're also aware that many parents are increasingly being asked to return to work by their employers, and that this has created real challenges both for you as childminders and the families that you support. Lots of work has been going on behind the scenes to develop the guidance, while the various organisations involved are all working remotely, and at a time when public health advice is being sought in almost every area of life. So please be assured that the guidance was developed as quickly as was possible, and that SCMA has had an opportunity to contribute to this process from a childminding perspective. As previously reported, all childminding settings can reopen from tomorrow, Wednesday the 3rd of June onwards within this new guidance. But realistically, many of you may need more time to digest the guidance, consider the implications on your practice, reflect on this, plan your reopening if that's what you choose to do so, but also to engage with and communicate with parents and carers. The first thing to note is the temporary capacity which will be allowed. All settings will be allowed to operate on the basis of supporting a maximum of 4 families, excluding the childminder's own family, at any one time, and also within the existing limit on your registration certificate. So to be absolutely clear, this does mean that you can support more than 4 families over the course of a week and on your books, but no more than children from 4 families, excluding your own, in your setting at any one time. For many childminders, and given where we all are, we hope this is encouraging news, as it may not be far off your normal registered capacity. The second thing to note, and an area which we've taken a large amount of contact from you on, is how should I manage this restricted capacity within my setting? The guidance helpfully provides a steer regarding this. It states that all settings should continue to prioritise childcare for key workers and vulnerable children as the first priority, as it's expected that demand for critical childcare will continue to be needed through the summer. However, the guidance then explicitly states that beyond that, childminders can use their discretion to allocate places to families. So let's break that down. If you're already open and are currently supporting key workers or vulnerable children, you should continue to prioritise the provision of these spaces and then use any spare capacity for other families. As you bring families back on, this could involve looking next at any other key worker families within your normal setting who you were not able to support during lockdown, either due to your restricted capacity or the manner in which key workers were prioritised at that time. However, if there are no other key workers or vulnerable children within the families that you'd normally support, then you could bring any families back in within capacity restrictions. Moving on to those settings who might be considering reopening, you should also give priority to key workers and vulnerable children. But if you don't have any within the families who you would normally use your setting, then you could also proceed straight to bringing any families back on within capacity restrictions. Where possible, if you are supporting key workers through private arrangements, it would be helpful to keep local authorities informed of this so they're aware of what support is being provided for key workers within their area. A number of members have also asked if the Care Inspectorate will grant variations at this time to assist with managing capacity with demand. We've discussed this point with the Care Inspectorate, and given the public health desire to restrict numbers and movement at this time, it's our understanding it would be very unlikely that variations would be granted to support demand. We understand these would only be considered in exceptional circumstances. This leads on to how long these temporary capacity restrictions are expected to last. The guidance is quite clear. It states that these restrictions will remain until Phase 3 of recovery commences. That will be when nurseries and other providers are able to reopen. The restrictions will be reviewed at that time, with the expectation that they will be lifted during Phase 3. Currently, Phase 3 is expected to proceed during the summer, but there's no precise date at the time of recording this update. Many of you have also asked if blended care will be allowed. We know this is hugely important to you, as a recent survey found that almost 50% of members are involved in providing some form of blended care. Given where we are from a public health perspective, the guidance states that blended care should be avoided where possible at this time, but may be permitted where this is the only option to support critical childcare arrangements. So, for example, for key worker families requiring to access both a local authority hub and a childminder due to their working hours. In such cases, this would be down to your individual discretion, following a risk assessment and consultation with the families and the other setting involved. So looking beyond the immediate point of capacity, the guidance covers a number of other areas, including what you need to do before reopening and adapting your practice. Most notably, all childminders must conduct a risk assessment on the basis of the guidance document before you open. You must also update your status with the Care Inspectorate. There's a lot of practical and useful information about measures to minimise the risk of infection and transmission in childminding settings. This covers enhanced hygiene, physical distancing, the use of outdoor space, PPE and ventilation. Previously, we have reported how physical distancing between young children and childminders would not be possible or desirable, and the guidance provides further detail about this. It also provides advice about the practical steps which could be considered to maintain physical distancing with parents and carers, but it's also realistic and recognises this will not always be possible. On PPE, or personal protective equipment, to give it its full name, the guidance continues to refer to the Health Protection Scotland website for the latest guidance. It notes that the current guidance is that childminders do not need any additional PPE for caring for children, and that routine PPE should be used when changing nappies and assisting with toileting, for which normal infection control guidance should also apply. As expected, there's detail about enhanced cleaning procedures to be used, and the document also states that staggered attendance times for drop-off and pick-up should be agreed with parents where possible. The guidance also recognises that additional challenges could present, such as when new children join a setting, there's a need to settle in, and it includes practical suggestions such as providing a virtual tour in advance or using an outdoor garden area. I would stress very strongly that my summary today is not exhaustive. It's essential that you access the guidance yourself and please read it thoroughly. So make yourself a cup of tea, coffee, whatever, reflect on what it says and how this could influence your practice. For a guidance document, it's not long. Moving beyond the guidance, we recognise that many of you have additional questions which I will try to answer. Do I have to open? No. This is a personal choice and there's absolutely no requirement to open at this time. If I do open, do I have to reopen on the 3rd of June? Again, no. You can open any time from that date on. You might also be concerned that you will only be able to partially reopen, that you might not be sure how much demand will be or if your business will be financially viable at this time, in which case many of you might be wondering if you can continue to access other forms of financial support if operating on a reduced basis. Some of you may also be unable to open if you have a pre-existing illness within your family and may also be wondering if you continue to access financial support at this time. As an organisation, SCMA is really aware of these concerns, and the Scottish Government has advised that the UK Government's Self-Employment Income Support Scheme is open to any childminder who is eligible and whose income has been negatively impacted by COVID-19, for example, while working reduced hours or not working, and who meets the eligibility criteria. Those of you who are eligible for the Chancellor Scheme may also be relieved that it was extended last Friday for a further 3 months. Applications for the second stage of this will open in August and will this time be based on 70% of average profits over the last 3 years rather than 80% in the first stage. I'm aware that I've dumped a lot of information on you this morning, but I wanted to ensure that we briefed you as much as we could on the key points announced. Please, if you do only one thing today, access the public health guidance, read it, and understand what this means for your practice. This should hopefully answer many of your questions. However, we know you'll have questions beyond that. We might not be able to answer them immediately, but please do get in touch and we'll try to get answers as quickly as possible for you. We'll also further develop our online FAQs resource as we're able to answer questions. We know the guidance is not ideal and it will present some real practical challenges, but we do believe it's as strong as the public health advice will allow at this time in recovery. And also the restrictions are expected to ease as we progress through recovery. As we've done throughout this crisis, we'll continue to support you at each step of the way and in helping you to recover your businesses. Stay well.